them Broken Bow fans. Hey, they're going crazy out here. I've never seen anything like it.
Still crazy about them Savages. Welcome back to another edition of the Southeast Beast. Skip Copeland alongside Chris Chandler. This week we review a thrilling football game between the Broken Savages and the Madill Wildcats. The Savages hanging on for a 1-point homecoming victory, 34-33 to go 1-0 in District 4A4. A very exciting football game, but kind of a tale of two halves, Chris.
Well, a tale of two halves and a tale of a huge momentum shift. Crazy is one way to describe it. It seems like the Savages were in total control of this football game, and it was going to be a blowout. I mean, we take the opening kickoff drive down on a couple of Brumley runs, and then do have a 4th and 1 down at about, I think it's the 29-yard line or 34-yard line. And then Brumley takes it, gets the first down and more, cuts back, runs, past a couple of guys into the end zone. And then we block a punt and scoop it and score on the next possession. It's 14-0. Then we take it 90 yards and drive it down. And all of a sudden it's 21-0 Broken Bow. And it looks like, this is early in the second quarter. It looks like we're going to go ahead and dominate the rest of the game. And it's going to be one of those ones where they run the clock the entire fourth quarter.
Yeah, we just really had our way there in the first quarter. The Savages, Brumley doing a good job mixing the pass and the run. He scored a couple of touchdowns. That 90-yard drive was completely impressive. I mean, they just really ran the ball. Rogers ran the ball well. They threw the ball well. Cooks made a big grab on that. Brumley caps that one off with another touchdown run, this time just a little 2-yarder. But the Savages were up by 3 touchdowns and looked to have the game completely under control. The two teams swapped possessions then, and Madill comes out throwing. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, they decide at that point then they're not able to run the ball. They haven't established the ground game, and so they decide that they're just going to throw the football. And throw it they did. They threw it around for the remainder of the game, beginning with a 53-yard touchdown pass there to make it 21-6 after a blocked extra point. So the Savages still holding on with the 21-6 victory, or excuse me, 21-6 lead there. But the Savages weren't finished scoring in the first half. They came right back with another impressive drive.
Yeah, and it actually started with, we actually took that kickoff after that score, and we snapped the ball high over the head of our quarterback and turned the ball over at our own 25, but then our defense stands up, and they are fantastic in a compacted zone, in the red zone. There was a 2-yard loss on a run to the perimeter, immediately followed by a 1-yard loss where Brumley and Bailey just crush a run up the middle. They throw an incompletion, and we sent Brumley and Bailey, for pressure on the quarterback, and then they throw it into the end zone. And Kanan Willis goes up and intercepts it. So he gives us the ball. And when it looks like they're going to get at least a field goal out of it, I mean, they have the ball 1st and 10 on our 25-yard line, and it's 4 and out with us picking off the ball. And then we drive 80 yards the other way. And, we have a holding penalty in the midst of that, but Brumley, again, was passing the ball around. He was throwing it to Willis. He threw it to Roberts. He threw it to Martin. I mean, he's really distributing it well among these receivers. And then to cap it off, to the primary target coming into the season, number 3, you got Kyron Whitfield coming on, and all he does is catch touchdown, 27 yards into the end zone, and all of a sudden it's 27-6 with 1:52 left in the first half. Looks like we have reestablished that dominance, but then...
Yeah, but then it's true. What was interesting about it is they threw mostly short passes. What we had seen on film from them was them tossing the ball way downfield and letting their receivers run and go get it. And they kind of changed that game plan up against the Savages. And on that next possession, we saw that again, a quick pass that turned into a 72-yard touchdown. The Savages with some poor tackling and possibly even being out of position a bit there on that play. But definitely the tackling hurt the Savages. The Savages let short passes turn into big touchdowns several times in this football game.
Yeah, and we had some lack of pursuit as well. I mean, I just remember one play, and it was toward the end, but there's a Cisco catches a short pass, and then he's running in the end zone. And Carl Cooks is all up. Carl Cooks is, over him, jumps on his top, grabs his waist, slows him down, is dragged about 5 yards, and then he finally, shakes Cooks off and gets in the end zone, but there's nobody else there. It was just Cooks. There was no pursuit down the field. And I will mention that you said that they were mostly throwing it long before, and that is true against Lone Grove and Kingston and Dixon. I think the difference is they knew coming into the game that they probably weren't going to be able to give their quarterback enough time to throw it 40, 50 yards downfield with our pass rush, and so they switched it to more of a short passing, mid-range passing game.
Yeah, if they didn't know that, they learned it in the first quarter, of course, because we did get good pressure on them in the first quarter. Our defense played really well up front, actually, all night long. We shut the run down, and we forced them into a situation where they did have to throw the ball. We questioned in the preview of the game whether or not they had that perimeter passing game. We thought that was the only way they would give the Savages problems, was if they could get those timing routes out there and get those, get the big hands of those receivers on the football. They showed us they could do that. 27-13 was the halftime score. The Savages, instead of being way up and feeling real good about themselves, kind of reeling in on their heels a little bit going into the locker room. They had a lot to talk about.
Well, and they did, and then they did make a few adjustments coming out, in the second half, but then Madill takes and they were dominant in the third quarter. I mean, they had a big third quarter, and then they eventually...
Well, they were dominant from that point forward, honestly, until the last broken bow possession. They scored they scored 4 in a row, 4 unanswered touchdowns, didn't they, from that one forward?
Well, it was actually, it was actually 27-13. They scored right there, if you're talking about when they got the ball back, because it was 27-13 after they scored that last touchdown with just 26.2 seconds.
I guess my point was we were up 27-6, and then they went 13, 20, 27, 33. So they scored 4 unanswered touchdowns to us. They dominated us through that period of the game.
And that's, the first one that kicked it off was literally with under a minute left. I mean, they had under a minute left, and they have the ball back at their own 27-yard line. And it's like 3rd and 13 from their own 27, and they throw this slant to Cisco. And he catches it at about the 41-yard line, so he's got enough for the first down, but then he takes an additional 59 yards into the end zone. And when he catches the ball, he's behind the entire secondary. But he's only 14 yards off the line of scrimmage, and so it wasn't a long pass as far as the pass itself wasn't long. The route wasn't a long route, but it turned into a long completion for a touchdown.
Yeah, they scored on passes of 53 and 72 in the first half, neither of which were more than about 12 or 15 yards downfield. They turned those into big plays. The first one actually looked like they were trying to set up some sort of screen to the receivers, trying to get some blocking in front of them, and the ball floated up a little bit, and I'm not even sure the intended receiver was the one that grabbed it and took it to the end zone, but regardless of who was responsible for the play, the Savages weren't in the right position to stop it. Same thing on that next touchdown, that 72-yard pass, the one you're talking about. Again, it was a quick timing route, broken tackles, and then a chase to the end zone. And I'm with you. I saw some people not completing the chase. You should be at full speed until that guy crosses that end line down there. And, strange things happen in football games. If you can save that touchdown in some way, there's a good chance you're going to get the football back without them doing any damage to you. But if you let him get in the end zone, it's 6 points no matter what.
Yeah, it's just pursuit until the whistle, and that's the thing. Anything can happen. The most memorable moment of this is if you remember, I picked on it, but I think it was like 1993. It was Dallas in the snowboat, but it's Leon Lett. He picks up a fumble. He's holding his hands out, and the pursuit gets and swats it out of the hand, and then they recover it. And so you don't know what's going to happen. The guy could just shift the ball and lose it. One of your teammates could just desperately, take a swing and knock it loose, and you need to be there if that does happen. Be there to pick up the football. It's interesting that these were all long scoring plays, other than one drive. And when we have a compressed zone, in other words, when they had 1st and 10 at our 25-yard line, we shut them out, and we play really well, and they don't get behind the secondary. And that may be because that linebacking core is there, 4 or 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. And so they know that maybe the secondary knows that short flat area is going to be covered by the linebackers. They can just kind of play back and just not let the guys get behind them. It's a strange phenomenon that we were so good in the red zone on like a short field, but then on a wide open field, we seem a little vulnerable.
Yeah, in the first half. In the first half, I would agree with that. The second half, I'm not so sure. They did actually get in the red zone and score a couple of times. They threw a beautiful fade pass over in the right corner of the end zone. Our kid was in good position, but they just put the quarterback just put the ball where only his guy could catch it, and his guy went up and got it and got his feet in bounds, and they got another score on the board. They took that one to 20. That took us to 27-20. We're still in the lead, but now only by one score. And then they put together a really nice drive. Madill drove the field, mixed things up, great timing routes, ran the ball to the edge effectively a couple of times even, and then finished that off with a little Wildcat quarterback sneak to tie the football game at 27. And well, I'm trying to catch my breath at that point. I'm thinking, what are we doing? We're reeling. We're on our heels, and we've got to get back into this football game. But wow, boy, they struck again in a hurry.
We look like we are. And actually, the first time of the night, we're behind. We do prevent a 2-point conversion at that point.
Yeah, let's talk about that scoring play just for a second. That's again another short pass. It's a quick post. They're probably 12 or 15 yards downfield when he catches the football. But the problem is that we were in man coverage on one split receiver. They came out double tight with two backs and a power set in the shotgun. And, they still were looking for Cisco. They were looking for that primary receiver. We kind of had our cornerback out there on an island. And then that was the play you referenced earlier, to where it was a quick pass. Cooks got to him and slowed him down, but we never had another defender get close enough to assist on the thing. He slowed him down long enough for it should have had some support. We should have got that kid to the ground before he got into the end zone 86 yards later. But it just never happened. I was very disappointed in the way we played.
Yeah, and the first guy, I believe when he crossed the goal line, I think the first guy might have been White, who's a linebacker.
Yeah, it was. Number 19, sure was.
Outside linebacker. And so, you're going, and again, it wasn't like it was a even 20 or 30-yard play. And we're talking it's from the other end of the field. So you got to get that pursuit and, give Cook some help, helping bring that guy down. He is the primary receiver, and he is a heck of a football player. Man, there's going to be some guys that are going to be looking at Steven Cisco. So, you're going to play opponents like that, but when you have that, it's going to take more than one guy to tackle him. So you need to get in there and do that defensively.
Yeah, well, he's a big boy too. He's 6'2" or so, and will go over 210 at least, and runs very well. He proved that to us on that 72-yarder in the first half, where he outrun our defensive backs to the end zone. It looked like we were going to catch him, and we didn't. He outran us. But on that 86-yard one, we had him bulldogged. And, we just didn't get him to the ground. And it was because Cooks was out there by himself. He was on an island.
And did catch him, get his hands around him, just couldn't bring him down. Of course, now Cooks gives up about 50 pounds to Cisco. And so, that's where you got to have that help. And at that point, things are not looking great for the Savages because we haven't scored since the first half.
Yeah, but the interesting thing was they had that same dilemma. Their coach had that same dilemma that Scotty Pratt faced in the previous game with Idabel, to where now what do? You're on the road playing Broken Bow, who's favored to win the game. And so they pull out the stops. They decide to go for the 2-point conversion and try to make the Savages have to convert 2 if they should be fortunate enough to score, make the Savages have to convert 2 just to tie the game. But the Savages stopped it. Again, the 2-point conversion failed, and the game then was at 33-27, just a 6-point margin, and that turned out to be a big deal.
Yeah, huge deal. And again, you don't criticize it. First of all, you're on the road, and you think, well, I don't want to give them an opportunity to tie it up. And second, they, especially in this situation, even more so than but we had already blocked not only a punt, but an extra point attempt. Aiden Coley got through there and knocked one of the extra points down. So, and keep in mind, not only had we blocked one, they had also kicked the first extra point they attempted into the back of a helmet of one of their linemen. So it's not like it's a sure 1 point, even if they kick it. So they're going to go for 2, especially on the road, and the thing is we had a little momentum after preventing, and we did a great job of shutting that down, deflecting the pass. They attempted to throw it there, right at the goal line. And we had about 4 guys over there. They reacted to the ball well. But then on the first play from scrimmage, we don't try to establish this long drive. There's still about, 2 minutes and something left. And we instead throw a pass, a perfect strike right down the middle of the field. Brumley drops it right into the hands of Camden Rogers, and then he just sprints into the end zone.
Yeah, we gave them a little dose of their own medicine there at the end of the game. We grouped those receivers over there on the right-hand side, caused a little congestion, and Rogers just ran right through the middle of it all, right to the football. Brumley put it right out there where it needed to be. 71 yards later, Camden Rogers is celebrating with his teammates in the end zone. Savages kicked the extra point. That's all they needed. 34-33 was the final score. The Savages able to hold on, get that first win in District 4A4, go to 1-0 in district play and 3-1 overall on the season. Congratulations to the coaches and the team. It was an exciting football game from start to finish, but it's one that you've got your notebook out because there's some things we can do better.
It's some things we can do better. There's also some things that we actually did do better. Most notably, we did not shoot ourselves in the foot with delay of game penalties. We even ran it up tempo effectively there in the second quarter at one point. We said, all right, we're going to hurry up. We're going to run a hurry. It was on that 90-yard drive, and we did very well getting out, getting set, and taking off on the snap, and then getting back set. I had them. In fact, I believe they had to call timeout to kind of stop us at one point because they were just out of position because of our offense.
Well, the Savages were favored to win the game at home. It was their homecoming game, and when they did, if by a narrow margin, 34-33. The other favorites in the district all won as well. Poteau 44, Fort Gibson 7. We'll see the Tigers this Friday night. We'll talk about that game here in just a moment. The Ada Cougars got their first 4A4 victory in a while, only because they haven't been in 4A in a while, but they beat the Sallisaw Black Diamonds 48-0. And then the interesting game, the other one that was interesting along with Broken Bow and Madill, was Hilldale against Stillwell, a game that you would think the Hornets would be heavily favored to win. And they did win handily, but the way they won was a little bit surprising. The game was very close. It was within one score at 18-23. Stillwell scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, to move to 18, and within that margin there, 18-23. From there, the Hornets took off. However, the final score, all of the scoring going on in the fourth quarter, 51-25, the final score. So the Hornets did get the victory. They're 1-0. All three of those teams got their plus 15 in the district tiebreaker. Broken Bow, the only winner that did not. So Broken Bow is plus 1 with a 1-0, and the other three are 1-0 with 15 points on the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and you look at the rest of the season, and again, it's like you hope you don't have to use the tiebreaker. And you don't if you win out. You win the rest of the games, you're district champ, and that's going to be obviously the goal of the Broken Bow Savages. Talking about that, that is interesting, that Fort Gibson Hilldale game, because the Hilldale Stillwell game, because Eric Virgil is, one of the, I believe he tops Class 4A in rushing yards. He had like 352 yards on 14 carries, albeit against a weak opponent, but it looks like it was just a shootout. And that may indicate that Hilldale, despite their offense, has some susceptibility defensively, but it also could indicate that Stillwell is pretty good. They had a couple of freshmen that started, a couple of years ago, and those guys are seasoned now. Fort Gibson, on the other hand, did not produce and just only scored 7 points the entire game. I know their quarterback, Cole Mahaney, had a high ankle sprain in the second game and was out. Kind of the same situation with Kyron Whitfield for Broken Bow. If he is back in with a high ankle sprain, you don't know how long that's going to take to heal. They are notoriously unpredictable. That's what Adrian Peterson had for most of his career. And but if they get Mahaney back and wide receiver Cade Waggle, who torched Broken Bow a couple of years ago back, then it could create some fits for the Savages.
Well, I don't want to see a repeat of what we saw Friday night from another team. The passing game, we've done a good job of getting pressure on the quarterback, but we've got to get in better position, and we have got to tackle. If they do catch those timing routes in front of us, we have got to get them on the ground, keep them in front of us, and not let them turn these into big plays. I don't know how many times this year. I can't go back and count, but I can remember a lot of touchdowns that were really just short, quick plays that turned into big, long touchdown runs. And we've got to find a way to resolve that.
And that's one thing that I think, obviously, I'm certain that they are working on that in practice and just the form tackling. And again, we're up against receivers that are a lot bigger than our secondary guys, but that's not going to change. Our secondary is a bunch of speedsters. I mean, these guys can fly around. They're, 3 of them are on the sprint relay team, but they're not big, fast guys. They probably average about 145, 150 pounds in the secondary, and you're going to be going up against these 200-pound, 220-pound receivers. And so you're going to have to fly to them, and you're going to have gang tackling with 3 or 4 guys on them.
Yeah, and we've had, we had a coach in the past, Rich Jones, a good friend of ours, yours and mine, Chris, but Rich won a lot of games for the Savages. And one of the things he looked at was solo tackles by his defensive backs. He thought that was a telling statistic of how many times that cornerback or that safety had to make a tackle by themselves. And that's he didn't want that number. He wanted that number to be as small as possible. You should have very, very few solo tackles by your defensive backs. They should be gang tackling back there.
Yeah, and then keep in mind that was you talk about that era. That's when you had guys like Anthony Young that would come and just stun an opponent. Of course, that's before they have changed the rules to protect from concussions, etc. But that is a factor. You just got
Byron Cherry.
Oh yeah,
Byron Cherry was Steven Sisco's size and playing safety.
Yeah, that's that can hurt. But that's something that Bromo's just going to have to do, and they're going to again you look at it. Well, Poto beat these guys, 44-7 or whatever, but that's Poto. They're undefeated. Well, actually, they're not undefeated, but they're undefeated in district, and they're ranked 4th in the state. So Broken Bow also ranks 7th in the state, but you're going to have to come out and you're going to have to play. And we don't know what we're going to see against Fort Gibson. We assume possibly their backup will be in there, but it may be Mahaney.
There's not a lot of good information about them right now. We don't know exactly what the status is on these injuries to their best quarterback and their best receiver, but that's going to obviously make a difference in the game. Just like our best receiver being, banged up, that makes a difference in the game. We've seen that.
And that's the thing is, what do you do if you were just looking at this last game, actually the last 2 games, and Whitfield didn't even suit out against Idabel, and had very limited action, did not play defense, was only out there for about half the snaps offensively, or even fewer than that, against Madill. But if you go back a couple of weeks, you say, man, you better, especially like the McAllister game, the Durant games, like you might want to look out for that number 3 and, certainly hope that he's healing and getting back closer to 100%, because Kyron Whitfield at 100% with Christian Brumley throwing to him makes a huge difference in offensive production, and he makes a big difference in defense playing center fielder back there. He can go up, get one of those balls they throw up, take it to the house. Also, Whitfield's like 6'2", and he's the biggest guy in the secondary.
I can remember, we talk about Coach Jones, but I can remember doing a coach's show with him one time, and he was trying to explain, he wasn't trying to explain. I was asking him about the tiebreaker in district, and he starts to explain it. And then at one point he says, you know what, if we keep winning, there won't be a tie. And I've always taken that as a philosophy. If we keep winning, there won't be a tie. So, don't worry about that 1 point, that 15 points, whatever. Just win the next one. Fort Gibson is up next, 7:00 kickoff at Fort Gibson this Friday night. We don't really know who's going to be on the field for the Tigers. We kind of know who's going to be on the field for the Savages, and let's hope that offense that started the game this Friday night starts this one on the road this week as well. Yeah,
and again, just a pretty good effort by the offensive line. We really didn't credit them during this broadcast, but they did a great job, especially in the first part of that game and on the final drive, of protecting Christian Brumley. I mean, when we in that series where we went up 21-0. I know one of those was a defensive score, but those 2 offensive, 80-yard drive, 90-yard drive, he had protection, and they did a good job blocking for the running backs as well. So big credit to the O-line. They did what they needed to do, and we get the 1-point win.
Well, once again, we thank you for joining us here on the Southeast Beast. We hope you find these entertaining and as much fun as we do giving them to you. We'll be back next week with a recap of the Fort Gibson game and a preview of the upcoming game in the same manner that we have here, we may have a special or two on the horizon for you as well, right here on the Southeast Beast. Until then, I'm Skip Copeland.
And I'm Chris Chandler. And remember, once a savage,
Always a savage.